What if your product team thinks they're climbing Everest, but in reality, they're barely out of the parking lot? In today's conversation, I sit down with Bogdan Coman, a veteran consultant from Modus Create, who has a refreshing take on product maturity. You're going to want to stick around to find out how your team can stop counting features and start creating impact. Let's do it. All right, Bogdan, why don't we start with getting to know you a little bit? Why don't you give us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yep. Good. So my background, generally speaking, let's say I do have like 20 plus years of experience in the tech space. I was starting my career very early as, let's say, an casual programmer when I was in high school. Then I was in computer science in the university. I was working during the dot-com bubble in a kind of, let's say, all-source environment, providing programming services to companies abroad. So, generally speaking, my experience is in big corporates. Now working in consultancy, I had an 7 years experience in startup environments, and now for 5 years and a half, I'm with Modus as a senior principal consultant in product management and strategy, working with various clients, especially on the, let's say, the higher part of the spectrum in product management, processes, strategy, mission, vision, product operating model, establish new practices, best practices in product management, product ops, stuff like that.
Wow. So it's safe to say you've helped build a product or two.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. So we're talking today about something that a project that you worked on and at Modus, and then you kind of developed something internally and shared it called the product maturity model. Can you tell us a little bit what the product maturity model is and why does it matter?
I will start with why matters. Because, let's suppose, for example, that you are a patient hiker and you want to climb a big mountain, let's say. So you did with things that are a bit less higher, but now you want to go, let's say, on Kilimanjaro, or maybe you are thinking even on Everest. But for sure, there are two different things, two different beasts. You need different gear, you need different fitness level. So when you set yourself a kind of a goal, you want to go somewhere. You have to be sure that actually you are prepared, and how you assess your preparedness. You have to understand where you are today. So actually, what product maturity assessment or matrix is to establish a kind of baseline for organizations from the point of view of product best practices, product management. What we are doing today. So we are a kind of project-minded organization. We just started a kind of agile transformation 1 year ago or even more, but we still are, let's say, more on the waterfall side of the business. Are we, for example, first thing first, establishing the specs first, and then only after that, when they are fully defined, we are going to go into development? Or do we really have a kind of agile approach? Because actually product management is just the way that agile is established and agile works. It's nothing, let's say, more different than the best practices or what it's established at the beginning with the agile manifesto. So long story short, let's say this framework, it's about understanding where you are from the product management perspective. How well prepared are you for scaling in order to, let's say, set a goal? What's next for you? And now we can talk more about different dimensions, because for sure we need to look through different lenses here. So, but maybe we'll have the chance to discuss more in the following.
Yeah, we can. I mean, I think that's a great next step. Talking about, and so I think I have a general understanding what you're saying. Product maturity. Um, so what dimensions are you when you're working with a client or an organization? How do you like? What dimensions are you looking at to assess maturity?
Um, so let's start with the more complex thing, which is not good. But these dimensions could be any dimension. But for the sake of simplicity, we usually use only four dimensions, which these four are the most important. And are is like this: the strategy side, processes, technology, and culture. I would say actually, from the importance point of view, culture comes first, in my opinion, because everything starts with the people. We have to have the right people, or the people trained in the right way, or with the right mindset. And then we might thinking, let's say, from this perspective about strategy, and then processes, and maybe at the end about the technology. So these are the dimensions that we use in our assessments at Modus, but also can be this framework can be more complex, but I would say is good. So from our use cases, these four dimensions, they work pretty good.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see how like the dimensions could change dramatically depending on the assessment and where they want to look and how where they want the conversation to go. Um, in your blog, you talked about different distinct levels. I think it started out with initial and it moved over to optimize, I think was the final. Can you break those down a little bit? Like kind of at a high level, like what does it look like to be in the initial phase? And then what does it look like to be in the optimized uh, uh, level, I guess you could say?
Yeah. So let's say that in a simpler way, it's a kind of scale from 1 to 5. But to give a name for these levels, yes, for sure, the first level, the most immature level, let's say it's initial. Then we move to repeatable, then it's defined, managed, and optimizing. They are just names, let's say. We could use 1 to 5, but it's better to use a name. Now, what is level one, or what is initial, is something when, for example, your organization doesn't have a formal environment for managing products, or a real product management team with well established product people. So in this type of organization, you'll see uh, kind of waterfall processes, even there were somehow changed the terminology to a kind of agile terminology, but still it's a type of project management with project managers mostly, or even project managers that, if a kind of agile transformation was started, these project managers, they changed their title to product owners, but they are still operate into this project management mindset. This is level one. And then step by step, the maturity grows. For example, in the repeatable, the second step, level two, we have organization that they started to establish some formal best practices for product management, and maybe implementing some tools. They may be thinking at the beginning now to have tools that are going to track the product side of the business, not only the delivery side of the business, like Jira. So they think on the product, like tools like Product Monk or Aha or something like this. In the define, the third level, we have some more well established practices. You already have maybe um, a kind of product leaders being formally established at the organization level, like director of product and product managers reporting to this director of product. So the organization started to establish the groundwork for having in place a strong product organization inside of the organization. A good sense of product mindset, it's present. So you might see here people that are evangelizing product best practices, even this product director or product lead, or even having something on the top like CPO. Usually, let's say the CPO level is set more in the fourth stage, which is name managed, where the product strategy is well defined, and this product strategy actually does its job of informing all product management processes. So I was saying this about this chief product officer. It's their task, together for sure with the board, with other C-level people, to define this product strategy. But the sole owner of the product strategy is the product guy that runs the product organization, which usually is or should be a C-level. And then on the last step, the last level, the level 5 of the optimizing, here we have, let's say, the ideal world. Which actually, I would say, in my opinion, the ideal world is not only like impossible, but is not good to be achieved, because from an ideal stage you can't evolve anywhere. So optimizing is rarely seen. But as a definition is here, every function is focused on continuous improvement, and you have for real what is named a product-led organization. So the organization is not longer led by budgetary things or by sales. For sure, this is very rare, and it's led by the meaning of the outcomes that a product is going to establish. And the North Star actually on the organization level is maybe not even the revenue, is how well the product does.
Mm. Yeah. So I think what I heard you kind of say, basically, the spectrum kind of starts out with, the initial phase. Organizations treat a product like they do any other project. It's just the thing that they're doing. They do the steps and they're done. Where in the opposite end, this is a product-led company that focuses on the value and understands the intricacies and all the different nuances here, that is focused on their clients and their customers and providing value.
Yeah, and here it's an important thing I would say to be highlighted, is the thing that the distinguishing between the outcome and outputs. So on the initial levels, like level 1, 2, what organization produce is actually an output. They measure the number of the feature. They even maybe measure the number of the tickets they have in Jira. So this type of vanity metrics, because they don't have something else better to measure. But when they evolve, they start looking to the outcomes and the impact over the overarching product. And they start to understand also the distinguish between the leading and lagging metrics. Usually, lagging are less important. They actually gives you understanding about achieving the success, but what drives the initiatives towards this success are the leading metrics.
Hmm. It's interesting.
Just an example, revenue, for example, it's a lagging metric.
Yeah.
But the key question is how we actually are able to impact the revenue. Or, for example, the number of the visits on the website, or the number of the downloads. Are
Right.
they something
It's a
that really
retrospective.
matter? Or yeah.
Right. Interesting. I've never heard that phrase before, leading versus lagging. I like it a lot. Um, So when you're working with these companies, and if you were, you know, coming into a company blind, like where do you think most companies sit on that maturity level scale? Like if you're like most companies kind of in their journey, where do they sit, and what are some common, I don't know, common things that you see to indicate what their maturity is kind of where it's at?
So for me, for sure, because I have seen different clients, many clients in the past, I'm somehow able to sense, to smell their, their maturity level only by the way they talk. The words they use, or the some patterns in their talking, stuff like that. To be very honest, so depends actually on the size and type of the organization. First thing first. So it's one thing if we talk about startups or even scale ups, and it's another thing talk about incumbents like financial institutions. Why? Because actually these startups or scale ups, they went through a kind of filter of VCs, and these people from the venture capital, they want companies to fail fast. And because they want to fail fast, they want to look very, very early in the process on the outcome. So they force the organization, the founders and anyone in the company to look very early into these outcomes and forget totally about the outputs. So these VCs are well trained into these products outcomes. So you'll see on companies like, I don't know, 1,000 people or few hundred people, some signs of good and well established product management practices at, let's say, 2 3 years after the formation of the company. On the other side, if we talk about a very big financial institution, the project mindset, it's more present because they actually come with this legacy of I don't know, industry 2.0. So they were operating 40 years ago very well. They scaled very well during the, I don't know, last century, even late 90s or beginning of 2000. But then at the moment with the financial crisis in 2008, they started to think on these agile best practices, and they started a kind of transformation, not only on the agile side but also with this product management. And they look to these very successful companies in Silicon Valley, like Uber, Stripe, and all the native IT or native product companies, and they want to be there. So they started, but for them it's very hard to transform, and it's a long, long, long process. So it depends on the type of the company, the size of the company, different
Yeah,
things.
and I think that makes sense. You know, there's lots of situations, but so let's talk a little bit more about what you built, the project maturity assessment tool. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is it? How does it work?
Everything started with a kind of workshop, let's say, I had with one of our clients, and presenting this matrix, this framework, and having a slide on the screen. Uh, we had a very good discussions, and then because of this feedback, I was start thinking if it would be possible to create a set of questions for sure for each dimension. uh, I said before about this 4 dimensions: strategy, processes, technology, and culture. So creating some questions that relate to these dimensions, and also questions that they focus somehow on the role of the person that responds, because it's one thing to talk about processes to a CTO, and it's another thing to talk about processes with a product manager. So they will talk about these processes through different lenses. Yeah, so it's important to know what type of questions to ask from the dimension perspective, but also to know to whom you are talking to. So different questions on dimensions, so different questions depending on the role. And this was the starting point. Is it possible to create a kind of survey, let's say, and based on the responses, two types of questions, quantitative questions. So, for example, how would you assess the CI/CD processes in your organization, having few responses, each response having um, a number, and also qualitative questions. So, having open-ended questions and letting people to tell whatever they want to say, because usually if you operate in a kind of safe space, people will start to tell what happens for real, and you know very well that people have a lot to complain. So if you can capture these things, you might actually assess everything, reading, going everything through your knowledge and your mind and so on, and at the end to create a scoring for each dimension, and then based on that creating an aggregate score for the entire maturity level. So you will be able actually through an entire process to say based on these questions that the maturity level it's around 2 or it's around 3. For sure, this is not like an exact number. It's not 3.2 and that's it, right? So it's just giving you, like, for example, maybe, when you go to, I don't know, to work out to a fitness center and you weren't working out for a long, long time, then you get a person that assess you, from the fitness perspective. It's more or less the same.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I think what you said earlier kind of makes a lot of sense, especially when you use the exercise metaphor. Because if you go to exercise without understanding where you're at right
Yeah.
now,
You can't do
you might make a
push-ups with, I
mistake,
don't know, right?
might pull a
It's the
muscle
same.
or hurt yourself.
For example, I met a client at the moment. They're willing to implement this product operating model. We want it. We want to have product operating model. But wait, wait, wait. How you really prepare so you are in the right stage to do, because it's not easy and it's not for everyone.
Yeah, 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 that's consistent with my my experience as well. People want the outcomes without really know if they're ready for the process or anything that entails. Um, so if I'm a leader in an organization and I take this maturity assessment that you've developed, what is the goal for me? What do you want me to take away from this assessment?
So the most important thing, is like this. I don't know who was Winston Churchill, I think, saying something that's not the plan itself, it's the big thing. The planning activity actually is the big thing. So this assessment, it's more on looking to the questions and having a thoughtful discussion with yourself, and when you write the responses you might understand different things. So this is very important just to take the assessment. Then as an outcome for the assessment itself, maybe the maturity level itself is less important than what you have to think about in the future to move to a desired state. So, for example, saying that now you are between 1 and 2, somehow more close than 2, and you would like to go in 2 years, let's say, on something like 4. But what you need or what should do in order to get to this level. And this, again, it's very important. A kind of plan, again, going to exercise. Okay, I want to, I don't know, run a marathon. Good, but what should I do in between today and the day that I will run a marathon?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So actually, to respond more specifically to your question, so our assessment, actually, what it does, besides creating this maturity level estimation, will give you a more deeper assessment on each dimension, saying where you are on strategy based for sure on your responses. And here is garbage in, garbage out, depending on what you respond, where you are, and what would be next for you, because maybe it's not the same next for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
for each
Right.
dimension. And then a kind of plan for what you should do in the next future to achieve the desired state.
That's cool. Yes, I mean, good. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of value. So speaking of which, um, so yeah, let's talk about value and return on investment. So obviously, we're talking about these maturity levels, and mature is better than immature, and 5 is better than 1. But if a company starts moving up this ladder to maturity, what is their ROI? What kind of things? What are the benefits that the company is going to see, kind of short term, medium term, long term, whatever, when they invest in their maturity here?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because it's not so obvious, the response. Why? For example, if you talk about productivity, right? What is productivity? Is the number of the features that you deliver, then on the unit of time. Then I will say a good maturity level will be less productivity, not higher productivity. Why? Because the key thing for a well established product company is to deliver less features with higher impact,
Hmm.
right? So
Right.
let's suppose I'm a company that I'm delivering out a kind of, I don't know, 50 features per year.
Right.
Okay, but what with is this feature? Do they have any kind of metrics attached? And
Or
also, I'm
value.
another
Right.
company, someone that I competing with the company A, and they deliver only 5 feature per year. Which company is better then? So productivity depends on which sense productivity. Okay, now return on investment will be, for example, that you will impact the lagging metric of revenue with less effort in building and higher effort in discovery. So you'll have this process established internally that you'll be able and patient enough to wait for smoke tests, to wait for validation, to wait for and give space to people to validate and not deliver and execute blindly, in order to have less features with higher impact. So, long story short, the return on investment for sure will be less cost, less spending, because actually you involve less man hours in execution. You may be having less engineers. I don't know. Uh, but if you ask, for example, about the deployment time or release time, this might be a bit longer because you have a longer phase of understanding at the beginning and maybe a shorter phase of building at the end.
Yeah, kind of measure twice, cut once.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of that, getting my ducks in a row at the beginning. And I really what you were saying about productivity really resonates with me. I've been thinking a lot about this. And yeah, the number of tickets that we close in a month or whatever is not a good sense of, I mean, I guess it is if you're thinking if that's your goal is to produce more tickets, but if your goal is to grow the company, if your goal is to mature the organization to build better products, how many bugs you close isn't necessarily a measure on that. Um, so
You,
yeah, I
you
mean,
know here, sorry, here, if you want a kind of analogy with an kind of legacy type of company, let's say that it's Ford building cars. It's one thing to build a car after car and selling these cars, but it's another thing just producing on stock and piling them up. Is for nothing. It's the same
right,
with the features. Okay, I'm building features, but these features, do I measure anything in terms of usage? You know,
right.
this is
Are they using it? Is
yeah,
it bringing value? Interesting. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, it makes great sense. So so let's go back to the maturity assessment. So let's say you're working with a client that's taking the maturity assessment and wants to mature, let's say from a 2 to a 3 here. Like how do you go about helping them? Like what does that process look like to helping an organization make that transition?
for sure. Here is where the fun starts, right? It's like again with the exercise. Okay, I get this understanding. I'm nowhere. Okay, I have to start on the
Uh,
beginning, and so now the hard
yeah.
work and the sweat, blood, and tears will come for sure. Now we have a kind of a framework internally that will come up with a proposal to the clients about, so setting at the beginning, we know where you are, and we decide together where you want to go in a certain period of time. And this period of time is not like 2 months. It's something that takes time. Why? Because this change is mostly about people, which people changing people mind. It's complicated and take time. Okay, so
Yes.
establishing these things at the beginning, then we come up with a proposal, and this for sure, this proposal is going to be discussed, and there are many of things to be considered, the specific of the organization and so on. But after a few weeks of working together with stakeholders inside of this organization, we'll come up with a plan, that this plan has a very clear milestones to be executed. For
Mhm.
sure, starting small, as any transformational thing, we are not going to a big bang to break everything, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
starting with a proof of concept, isolating a team, picking a team, and then trying to see which are the things that we are going to change within this team, for sure, in regards of what was decided at the beginning, letting these people and this team to evolve a bit, then measuring for this transformational project, measuring something, because for sure all the time the success should be measured. We want to eat our own dog food, and measuring for sure the outcomes, not the outputs. For example, how many documents this team produce, or artifacts, is not this the point anyway. So first step, it's for sure a kind of pilot, then measuring the success of the pilot, then establishing the strategy for scaling, looking, because this scaling is not going to be again a big bang, it's a step by
Right.
step scaling. So yeah.
It makes sense. I mean, going back to the it sounds like if you go back to the Kilimanjaro, the hiking metaphor, it sounds like a bit of the role of a Sherpa, assessing what we have, making a plan,
Yes.
and then taking them on the route.
Yes, this is a good thing. Well, we models, we might be at the beginning this Sherpa people, right? And then step by step, you will be able to achieve your goal with our help. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes it fun doing it together. So, back to some of these dimensions, and just kind of, I think we're kind of getting to the end here, so we're kind of wrapping up. So, just a kind of some things, maybe some quick takeaways for people. Um, what are some dimensions? I mean, that we talked about before. I know we talked about culture being kind of maybe the most important. Well, where do you feel like, what dimension do a lot of organizations overlook or undervalue? Current.
exactly the culture. So usually from my observation, and also it's not like uh, here a kind of epiphany. It's very obvious. Organization, they want to step very fast into the processes side. So if they ask them, they will specify processes or tools. Actually, tools are very often. Why? Because I will give you an example. It's a pain point that it's observed and it's very obvious. Like, for example, I have a certain toolbox with a certain number of tools, and these tools are not working together well. So this organization, they say like, we have a tool problem. We have a tool problem because actually these tools are not well integrated. But guess what? The tools themselves, they are dumb. The tools themselves, they are not aware about any maturity or any type of intelligent process. They actually shows us the gaps that we have actually into the processes. So if the could be for sure a technical problem, but usually, very often, it's not a technical problem. It's a matter of a subpar definition of the processes, and because these processes are not linked together in a meaningful way, then guess what? The tools are not linked together in the meaningful way. So they come up with a tooling problem, then they want to fix the process. But for sure, what we try to say, and usually this is the core problem, the unseen part of the iceberg, is people. Because actually people, they are creating processes, and these processes are there to make the tools work. But think about people. If you have the right people with the right training, with the right mindset, with the right critical thinking, which are able to create these processes in a meaningful way, so having tools working right.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and and last but not least, strategy. And few words about strategy. Usually tactics eats strategy at the breakfast. So uh if I will put Josh in a position to deal with both sides, with strategy and execution, then step by step, I would say in 3-4 weeks, 1 month, you'll focus mostly on the execution side, because it's more uh, burning. It's burning every day, and step by step you'll start forget about strategy. And maybe this is the reason strategy is so overlooked in many organizations.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. And what you were talking about with people and process and tools is so consistent with my experience and from a tooling consultant. Um, yeah, I mean, it's they come and they buy a tool to fix it, and 99% of the time, it's just like you said, it is a process problem or it is a people problem or it's both.
Yeah.
And the tools sometimes impact that, but usually it's the tools are just an outcome of those processes and people that they have at the organization. Um, but yeah, I think we covered all of our bases, Bogdan. I really appreciate the time. Is there anything else that you want to touch on before we close up today?
Oh my God, I don't know. I will say only that I really enjoy personally, as a person and as a professional, to work into these type of things. And I'm sometimes reflecting myself on these things. We work in the technology space, but actually all these things that I was talking about, they are an intersection between a kind of philosophy, behavioral economics, human sciences, and just a bit of technology.
A little bit of technology, exactly right. Well, cool. Yeah, again, I always appreciate the time with you, Bogdan, and I appreciate you taking time today to share your thoughts. Yeah, I'm sure people will have questions and they'll reach out to us. But yeah, thanks again.
Thank you, Josh.
Huge thanks to Bogdan Coman for joining us today and sharing his time and expertise. For anyone interested, you can go to pma.moduscreate.com to take the product maturity assessment. And until next time, remember, less features, more impact.